I'm Joanne South and I'm a Client Strategy Director here at RocketMill, and my presentation today is called Stop the Tail, Wagging the Dog, and it's about planning and budgeting. Potentially very exciting subjects, I know, but it's so important that we get this process right. It is the bedrock and foundation for what we do and for what we do ultimately succeeding as well. And I think there are lots of issues in the way in which businesses and marketers go about doing their planning and budgeting. And actually a lot of my thinking came off the back of some survey results which came out at the end of July as well, which I wanted to touch on too. So to start off, as soon as I say the word budgeting, I think regardless of whether you work in marketing or not, it tends to create a sense of dread and fear among many people. It's visions of being shut in a room, lots of spreadsheet, lots of data, not necessarily understanding what that data means most of the time, having to make it all add up at the end somehow, and a bit of finger in air going on as well, to be honest with it. But why do we dread it so much? And I think a lot of it comes from this scenario that most people will have experienced at some point, again, regardless of whether you work in marketing or not, is that you are given a target. You're then told that you have the same budget as last year, or if you're really lucky, you've got some sort of inflationary level increase. And then what numbers do you need to hit that target? What you're effectively being told to do is go fetch, give me a graph that goes up, and tell me what it is you need to do within that basically. And effectively as well, it's frequently therefore being told to do more with less as well, ultimately. Whenever I've been in this position, there's always three questions that come to my mind with this. The first is about where that business target has come from. How have the exec and the board put that number together? What's the process they've gone through to come up with that number? The second one is what will achieving that figure allow the business to do that it can't currently do? And it could be something really significant, like being able to be of a certain size where it could acquire another business in order to grow, or be able to float on the stock exchange, and lots of other things in between. But what tangible differences are going to make to the business if that number is and isn't hit? And then the third thing is why that particular number? Why not a percentage point more? Why not 10% more than the number they're putting together? Why that particular one? And it's really interesting when I've asked these questions to really senior people within businesses that sometimes they can't actually give the most robust answers to these questions. And it's either because the exec and the board haven't provided that information and explained it well enough themselves within the business, or perhaps they haven't gone through the most robust process themselves, potentially, if I may say. But what this really brings home to me is the fact that actually some of the people who are probably least familiar with the market, the consumers, the blockers within the business are setting the agenda for the rest of the business when actually they're not as close to it as some of the other people are. And therefore for me, that is the definition of the tail wagging the dog. Regardless of how cute the dog is, it's still the wrong way around. And I think one of the other things that makes this process so wrong, in my opinion, is the fact that there's a huge investment that's obviously made within the resource that the businesses have in terms of, it's senior and experienced people, and their expertise and insights are not being brought to bear during this planning and budgeting process so much because they're told this is the target, what are the numbers you need to do to achieve that. And that then flows through to the investment that's then made within agencies as well, that you don't get even that external validation around what the market potential is and what those issues and challenges are that need to be resolved as well. So I wasn't surprised when I saw these survey results come out at the end of July, which was that 60% of marketers are not confident in their team's ability to effectively allocate marketing budget. So I wanted to unpick this slightly as to where some of the issues were, particularly within marketing, but also what we can do to try and fix this so that we do this better and businesses do this better as well. So the first statistic is that 20% of marketeers set their budget annually and they don't change it. What that tells me is that there are a fifth of marketers who are mystics and fortune tellers. They know what is going to happen for the next 12 months perfectly. They know what the market's going to do, they know what their competitors are investing in and going to be launching, they know every single consumer trend that's going to be coming about, they know what technology is going to be cost effective over the next 12 months, and they know about really macro trends as well around like what is happening with the economy and therefore what's happening with consumer confidence around spending, for example. So this year alone, this fifth of marketeers will have missed things around the impact of Cambridge Analytica, the continuing rollout and impact about what's happening around GDPR, the attack that's been happening on the high street as well with lots of really reputable brands disappearing, and the status of the Brexit talks as well in terms of confidence as well within consumers. So this saying really hit home to me when I was thinking about this, and the fact that madness really lies in doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. This type of annual planning process really encourages safe marketing behaviour. It really encourages the status quo rather than allowing people to really change. are for businesses to really change. So you may be able to plod along a couple of years like this, but actually it's going to ultimately fail because the business isn't going to be able to react and change what it's doing to respond to all those trends because it's set and fixed, and it's just a process thing that is stopping them from doing that. The next statistic from the survey was that 57% of marketeers use an internal spreadsheet to estimate their impact. We all love a good spreadsheet. They have lots of very important values. They communicate things really well, love a good pivot table. But can we really communicate everything we do in marketing well in a spreadsheet? There are some things it's great at, as I said, but there's lots of other things that cannot be communicated via a spreadsheet, but provide a huge amount of value to the business and allow other departments and teams within the business to do their job properly. So things like brand reputation, loyalty, brand advocacy, audience building. How do you communicate that onto a spreadsheet satisfactorily? But without those things, marketing can't do its job, and neither can most of the other departments within the business as well. So when they're planning and budgeting, it's really minimising and reducing what marketing actually brings to the table within this. And again, I think this is where the external agency involvement also comes in, because if it's an internal spreadsheet, it means agencies can't feed into that as well, or certainly not very easily. So you're unable to integrate data sources very easily. You don't get that external validation around what the market could do. And also, frankly, you're trying to communicate this value to non-marketeers. Some basic data visualization would surely help here. So this really got me thinking about, well, what is it we're actually planning and budgeting against when it comes to our activity as well? This is a really tiny selection of potential KPIs, I should caveat within this one. But as marketeers, we work across the whole of the customer life cycle. So everything from reach and eyeballs to interactions, shares, likes, right down to the pounds, shillings and pence as well. And actually lots of the different bits of activity we do are to generate reach or to increase dwell time or to increase views. So trying to always communicate that into a spreadsheet and put a pound sign against it just doesn't work. That's not the KPI. It's not why we're doing it in that specific instance. It's to help someone else do their part of the job as well. So if, for example, you're talking about retention, and the product, it relies on the product itself and customer service to feed in within this. Marketing doesn't work in isolation, basically. So I think when we're talking about return on investment, we're too keen to put a pound sign on everything. That actually return on investment can mean lots of other things as well, potentially, and that relates to the KPI that the activity itself relates to as well. So the final thing that's got me thinking about is this balance between the creative and the rational and the logical, if you like, within this as well. Over recent years, marketing's become ever more data-driven, which is definitely a good thing and a positive thing. We need to understand trends, we need to understand our audiences, we need to do the analysis, we need to be held to account and measure our success. All really strong and valid things. But what makes marketing a distinct discipline and a distinct department within businesses is our creativity. We paint pictures, we tell stories, we use emotions to communicate to other human beings about aspirations and hopes as well. That is not something that a pure piece of data will make you jump to in terms of what that is. And I think therefore this whole process about how we plan and using things like spreadsheets and being told you've got a target really limits some of that creativity, and that's the thing that actually unlocks the potential. You don't get IKEA's Lion Man campaign without being a bit brave. You don't get Compare the Meerkat. You don't get Cadbury's Gorilla campaigns off the back of pure data analysis. But if you looked at it on a spreadsheet and plan it to hit a certain target, there's a massive leap of faith that these sorts of campaigns will deliver that level of return that those companies needed. But you also can't argue that they didn't deliver that massive change for these brands as well. So I think, the very nature of what we do, we need to test and learn. We need to be unapologetically creative as well with what we do when it comes to planning out our activities. And particularly on the test and learn front, I think the only way we can really fail is if we don't learn quick from this, so we're mitigating the risks around it. But ultimately, we have to still be held to account, which is where the data and the numbers come back in within that. So how do we go about changing this? So there are 4 key things I think that we can do within this. The first is I think we need to flip this whole planning and budgeting process on its head, that we look at what the business goal is, and that may be visionary rather than a number, but what marketing activities do we need to do to hit that number? And this is where something called zero-based budgeting or zero-based planning I think really comes in, that you flip the system on the head, that we're in control of our own destinies as marketeers. We decide what are the right things to do, what can the market deliver, what are the blockers, what are the issues, what are the different KPIs we need to hit to get to that ultimate vision and goal. Taking this approach allows us to integrate creative campaigns, to do test and learns, and to run different scenarios as well. And there's obviously a balance here between what marketers think they can deliver versus what the business necessarily wants, but it's a conversation and a dialogue rather than a dictation on either side. The second thing, which is really important and connected to that, is the sequencing and the ordering of those activities as well. You know, if there's a problem with your product and you're being told to just bring in more leads and bring in more sales so that the bottom line still looks good, that's the wrong thing to do. It's wasted money. You're just going to keep dropping people out the bottom of the bucket. Sort out your product first and then invest in your marketing. Or if there's a problem in your sales team, you know, there's no point spending lots of money on leads if they can't be converted, so long as you know the quality leads, of course. So it's about getting that jigsaw of things together and planning more collaboratively so that it's more joined up basically within that in terms of the ordering and how and where you spend your budget. The third thing is about joining that creativity and the logical side of things together in terms of being able to communicate that impact. You know, I'm probably going to be communicating this to non-marketeers. You know, the stereotype is your finance director who doesn't understand and just wants the number at the end. But we're used to communicating things to people who aren't prepared to or aren't knowing they want to listen to us and things. That's part of marketing's job. We can cope with some finance directors surely if we come up with a slightly more ingenious way about how we communicate the impact of what we do. And then the last point is that we have to be prepared to be held to account. If we're putting our destinies in our own hands, if we're dictating and saying what we could do, and this is our set of recommendations, we need to be held to account with that as well. And you know, if something doesn't go right, learn quick, move on, what's the next steps from that as well, which I think is really important. So I think those are the 4 steps to basically how we can make marketeers happy puppies. Thank you.